We're going to need the mic.
Here it is. Right here. Scott.
Yeah, but this one works.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Scott Lee. I'm an alcoholic. And wow, what an honor to be here. What an absolute honor to be here at my own state convention. It's a big deal for me. Lois Wilson said in a moment of silence that she invited God to the meeting. And I love that. And so in a moment, I'm going to ask you to do that. Just in case somebody doesn't have a God, or you got here like I did, afraid there might be one, let me recommend that you borrow mine. I recommend him very highly. He's got a great sense of humor. You can address him as a God of Scott's limited understanding and get you off on the right foot. And then we will slowly, I say again, slowly whisper the serenity prayer. Let's take a moment and invite God to the meeting. Serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. God bless you. I started whispering the prayer a number of years ago. I was in one of the gated communities, that's a jail, and they open with the serenity prayer and close the Lord's Prayer, and they're all suffering from testosterone poisoning, and it sounded like an invitation to a fight. God, granted, I thought, man, I can't listen to them do that to the Lord's Prayer. I just can't. I asked them to whisper it. And what I found is, for me, that changes it from a ritual back into a prayer if I slow down and whisper it. Bill and I were asked to do a workshop. Thank you, John, for inviting us to do that. And John asked us to come together and put together a topic, and we did. And we agreed on it, and we told John what it was. And none of us can remember.
You're not supposed to tell him that.
And, well, that's that rigorous honesty thing you've been hearing so much about. It's an acquired taste. And so I'd like to turn it over to my good friend Bill, who's going to start, and then I'll figure out what the topic is while he's talking.
Bill, alcoholic. So we're your challenged workshop leaders here tonight. And I'd like to apologize for Barkley. It's a bit painful, but you get used to it after a while. You get used to it, you know. So what we would like to talk about is spiritual condition, about getting one of those and how that happens. So there you go. So I have some experience with this. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't believe in God. And essentially what an atheist is someone who creates a God and then doesn't believe in it. If you stop and think about that, you'll realize the truth of that. And sponsors say things when you express that to them, and because you want to argue about it, they say things like, I don't believe in the God you don't believe in either, which is confusing because I want to argue about it, and he was not about to argue about it. So began the journey. So began the journey of trying to, if you stick around here long enough, you're going to have to deal with this. My experience with that is that most human beings are in the concept business. We want a concept of God. We talk about that. Choose your own concept. So we go about the business of looking for a concept. And boy, there's a bunch of them. There's a lot of concepts out there. There's a lot of books. There's a lot of speakers. There's a lot of spiritual teachers. There's just a lot of stuff going on about this concept of God. Most of us are aware of the fact that there's a bunch of different religions. About 400 or 500 of them is the last count, something. There's just all kinds of approaches to it. And so you go about this journey. I went about the journey of trying to find something. Now, in hindsight, looking back on that, here's what I think happened. I was lucky that I got a sponsor that started working the steps with me right away. He said, read the doctor's opinion, be at my house Thursday at 5 o'clock, and we'll discuss it. And I began the process of showing up at this man's house, and he didn't trust me that I'd read it, and he had me sit there and read it to him out loud, right? Because I figured he couldn't read, so he needed my help. And I start reading that, and he asked me some questions, and we got to the second step, and I said, well, there is no God. And he goes, okay, let's move on. And we got to the third step, and I couldn't do it. I asked him later, how come you didn't get on your knees with me and say the prayer? And he said, I was afraid you'd come over the table at me, so I just thought we'd skip that one and get you into the inventory, you know. And this has been a very circuitous route of going back through this process with a different attitude each time. And I did an inventory, and I did a fifth step. And what happened when I did that fifth step, I was 6 months sober. And I was 37 years, almost 38 years old. I think I was 38 by that time. And I hadn't been 6 months sober since I was probably 15 or 16 years old. And I don't know if you can remember that, but that's a shock to the system, isn't it? They've taken away our medication. This is not necessarily a comfortable place to be. But I did that fifth step. And I believe when we do the fifth step is when we join AA. I think that's the official. Matter of fact, my sponsor went around and told people, you can talk to him now, he's okay. You know? I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, you're a member now. And I go, well, the only requirement, he goes, yeah, okay. You got to do something around here to really be part of, and you've done something. You've done your inventory, and you did a fifth step. And one of the things he told me to do when I go home that day, after sitting quiet for an hour somewhere, when you go home, think about the guy that walked through that door 6 months ago compared to the guy that walked through it today. And I actually did that. And I believe I had, when I look back on it, my first real spiritual experience. Because usually what we're looking for is something very dramatic, you know. We want a Bill Wilson white light kind of a thing, you know. I don't think that happens to most of us, though it does happen. But this isn't what happened. I stood on that front porch and I actually thought about the guy that walked through it 6 months before. And it struck me. It's going to be like this now. That's really something, isn't it? Today than it's ever been. Changed the course of my life. That is exactly what happened to Bill Wilson. And in the time of Bill Wilson, spirituality and religion were one and the same. The Eastern thought hadn't come to the United States yet until after World War II and into the 50s. So that's what they equated it with. When they would talk about spirituality, they were talking about a concept, a religious God of some sort that you could actually communicate with. The idea of a unifying experience or other ways of looking at it really weren't there yet. So that's what he came up with. As I worked the steps and I made amends and so on, if any of us that have been around here long enough realize that we have rested on laurels. A laurel is a past achievement. That presumes we have some past achievements, you know? So my job of getting a spiritual condition, hopefully I'm going to generate some past achievements. I'm going to do some good works. I'm going to help some people. I'm going to have commitments. My life is going to get better, and I can look back and I start liking myself a little bit, and I go, yeah, Bill, you're not such a bad guy. I've got some past achievements. And I've rested on those and then found out why that's not such a good idea. You know, I don't think anybody hasn't done that that's been around a while. Just, well, I'm backing off now. One time I used to say, you know, I can't go to the recovery houses anymore. I'm too busy. You have to come and get it. I think that's laurel resting, right? Now, I would actually say that out loud in meetings because I'm on level 2 sobriety now, right? I've worked through that lower stuff, and I'm up here now, and you got to come and get it. You know what happens when you say that stuff out loud in AA meetings? A guy walks across the room and he says, I'm in a recovery place and I don't have a car. Can you come there and read the book with me? That actually happened to me, and I stood there and I went, oh, jeez. Not about him, about me. Who says stuff like that? I do. You know? I say stuff like that. That's honing the spiritual condition. You know? That's humility in action happening to me. So I believe the process of the steps will bring about this spiritual condition, and then I go about the process of maintaining that, of trying to maintain some kind of a spiritual condition. What's that look like on our spiritual path? I believe the path of Alcoholics Anonymous is to literally, not figuratively, literally get out of self. Not just talk about it, literally get out of it. And I don't know anything that will motivate that or cause that to happen any more than sponsoring people. I've done a lot of stuff in AA, so has Scott, so has a lot of people here that I know well. We've done a lot of things. We've got some laurels, right? But nothing has impacted me more than that. Nothing. I've had the wonderful opportunity of saying to a guy that doesn't believe in God, I don't believe in the God you don't believe in either. It's a wonderful thing to say. And look at the confusion in their face. What are they going to argue about now? Look at that. And so I think that that's what's going on here, this spiritual condition we're talking about. We work the steps. We go through all of this stuff. When we say working the steps, it's more than just reading the book and writing stuff on paper. It's living it. And there's no way you can live it more than when you're trying to convey this information and go through the steps with someone else. And that's changed me more than anything else. So over the years, this concept of God, you hear people say, I have a personal relationship with a power greater than myself. I didn't understand that when they would say that. I didn't know what they meant by that. And what I believed is I don't have that. They've got something I don't have. So I would go to people, primarily men, but not always, and ask them, what do you mean by that? What's that feel like? What's that like? And you get a couple of different answers. Sometimes they get perturbed with you for even asking the question, and what you realize is they're just repeating something that they've heard somebody else say, that they really can't, they don't have that, whatever. I don't know what that is. The other one is somebody that's really got something going on. It doesn't lend itself to verbal explanation. It's an emotion. It's a feeling that they have, and they'll say things like, well, I have a father, or I'm never alone. I don't feel alone anymore. That's a good one, and I get that, But I didn't have that. I didn't think that I had that. I didn't have, what is this thing? So here's what I've come to. I think, this is what I say, this is my opinion, which I like all my opinions. And you should have that too. It's something I'm trying to help you, if you go along with me in this. I think that God, by its very nature, is impersonal. That the idea of a personal relationship is an egoic idea of the mind. I want my relationship, preferably one that's better than yours, right? And you can see that all around the world. I want my own. What if, I'm just proposing this, what if the truth is that we are not separate, unique, and standalone? That we're not separate from each other? That's the ego's job is to create separation. That's what it does. I am always the subject and everything else is an object. What if that's the illusion that the gurus are talking about when they say life is an illusion, that this is illusory? What if the truth is that we're not separate, that we are truly dependent upon each other, that we need each other, that we don't exist without the other? And it's not just other human beings, it's all of nature. We can't possibly be separate from the natural world. We are part of it. And these experiences that we have, when we have these little experiences, are unifying experiences where you get a glimpse, just a little glimpse of that. Have you ever had, I've had experiences where I'll sit in my backyard and the wind is blowing through the birch trees, and I'll be in meditation, I open my eyes and I see that, and what came out of me almost unwillingly was, there you are. Still chokes me up. There you are. There it is. What is it? Who cares? Because there it is. I can see it. Sometimes you can see it. I think that's really bitching. You can just see it, There it is, Hi, And there are those moments, and they're uplifting and they're fulfilling. And then, like any human being, like any good drug addict or alcoholic, I try to recreate it. But they're one-offs. They're one-offs. Little blissful things. But so what if God, by its very nature, is impersonal? That all there is that. There's no God-sized hole. There's nothing missing in me. The spiritual path is subtracting everything in me that's blocking me from seeing that I already have everything I need. And I just can't see it. I think that's what's cooking.
I'm Scott Lee. I'm alcoholic. And I made a mistake. I should have gone first. I'm going to be kind of mundane here, but I agree with what he said, at least the parts that I understood. And really, so many things I want to talk about here, some things that have just meant the world to me. Page 46 says it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power which is God. I had to get out of the business of understanding God. My sponsor says the teacup of my mind cannot contain the ocean of God. So when we talk about God as you understand him, we're not saying I'm going to understand God. I'm not. We're saying I don't have to believe what anybody else ever told me, and we don't care how qualified they claim to be. Doesn't matter. Me and God can work that out. I had one of those white light experiences that he talked about when I was in treatment. My soul screamed for forgiveness for the worst thing I'd ever done and got it. And I was in the presence of this astonishing love, light. There are not words for things that happen on the spiritual plane. There are no words on the physical plane that will convey it. And I tell people, if you didn't have one of those, I think it's because you weren't sick enough to need one. And I mean that. I absolutely mean that. And I had one of those. And every year I get to tell that story to a lot of our people. And every year people come to me and say, I had one of those and drank again after it. I do not believe that event would have carried me this far. I needed the rest of it too. It was just a cornerstone for somebody who was extremely sick. That's all that was about. For those of you who read the book regularly, you know that they sneak into your bedroom at night and change some things. I'm going to note a couple of changes from last year. On page 13, the 11th line, the last word is friend, capital F. That's a reference to God as a friend. That's not what I came here believing. I see a lot of new people come to us believing in a God I'd be afraid to meet in a dark alley. And this idea of got to have a friendly God or I can't do step 3. Darn sure can't do 6 and 7. So we need to fire the old God. The other thing they changed on page 13 was at the bottom. It says, my friend promised when these things were done I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator. That implies that I had an old one. If you'd asked me 2 years ago if I had a relationship with God before I came here, I would have said no, and I would have been wrong. I did have one. It had a name. It was 911. See if you recognize any of these pre-AA prayers. God, please help me pass this test I didn't study for. Please don't let her be pregnant. I'm told I can be prayed in the first person. Please don't let those flashing red and blue lights be for me. Another very popular one, and my personal favorite, which I think is the main pre-AA prayer, occurs between 2 and 3 in the morning. I'm in the bathroom kneeling on the prayer rug. Yeah, and we're at the point of proceedings where there's nothing coming out but noise and occasional tear. Remember that part? Yeah. And we're going to do it together, by the way. I'm going to do the first line, you do the second. Trust yourself, you know the prayer. All right, here we go. God, get me out of this and... which is alcoholic for amen, as I'm sure you know. If you're new and not sure you need to be here, we have a one-question test. Did you know the prayer? The earthlings don't know the prayer. I mean, that's just the reality. So it said I couldn't understand God, but page 28 says, if what we have learned and felt and seen means anything at all, it means that all of us, whatever our race, creed, or color, are the children of the living Creator, with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms as soon as we're willing and honest enough to try. I cannot understand God. I can understand the relationship, and this is how I understand it today. I have invited God in to run my life. He has accepted. That's how I understand it today. I re-up that every morning. I like to open my day with prayer. I open by thanking him for some things. It seems to open the channel. And then I invite him in as CEO, as manager, as boss. I use all of those terms. And I know that I did not surrender. This morning I did not surrender. I volunteered. It has a similar result, but it comes from a very different place. And it comes from the God of my experience. My experience is that God's will is not a good deal. It's the best deal there is. And when I invite him in as manager, as CEO, I'm asking for the best possible package, and includes the things that I don't like, and there are probably going to be some that I don't like. I think the two best pieces of news I ever got in my life are on this book, and I'm not sure which one's more important. On page 46, we found that God does not make too hard terms to those who seek him. Let me translate that into Tennessee English for you. God ain't mad at us. Man, that was some good news. That's not what I've been told. I got here afraid of God. And God's will. Right. Can't work with that. Some very well-meaning religious people have been trying to scare people like me into being a better guy. I don't scare. It never worked on me. The other piece that was so important is on page 62. It says, selfishness, self-centeredness that we think is the root of our troubles, driven, not mildly bothered on rare occasion, driven by 100 forms of fear. Fear is a deep concern I may not get my will at some time in the future. Self-delusion, I believe my own BS. I've only got 2 brain cells left. One of them creates BS, the other one buys it. Self-seeking, I'm full throttle after my will. I'm not thinking about you at all. And self-pity, poor me. I didn't get what I wanted in the past. Poor me, I'm not getting what I want right now. Pour me a drink. John B. At this point, my sponsor said, how would you like some good news? I said, well, I would. He said, how would you like the best news you're ever going to get in your entire life? I said, I'm open, babe. Hit me with it. And he said, so our troubles we think are basically our own making. Was that it? That was it. I don't get it. He said, if it really is the cops, the courts, the judges, the Russians, the Chinese, your future ex-wife, her mother, and their lawyer, if those people really are the problem, you lose. The good news is that you, sir, are the problem. If you'll bring some willingness to this party, we can work on that. He defined willingness, bottom, and surrender. I got these from John. All have the same definition. If someone who's qualified, a sponsor, for example, asks me to do something I don't like, that I don't think will help, that I don't think matters, that I don't want to do, and I do it anyway. Is that do it anyway that defines bottom, surrender, and willingness. And I need do it anyway as badly today as I did the day I got here. I've got more to lose now. I've got so much more to lose. I want to talk about a couple of very personal experiences. I told you I had the white light experience. I completed this 2 of our best kept secrets, okay? Here's one of them. The directions for doing a 4-step have been cleverly concealed in the pages of the big book. This treatment center did not have that information, and I completed their alleged 4-step, and I did my 5th step with one of their counselors, and I began to get relief. And some weeks later, I'm laying in bed one night and talking to God like I'm talking to you. And it felt, I could feel the presence. It was like it surrounded me, and I was floating in it. I swam in the Mediterranean one time. It's so salty that it'll support a guy like me. I could just lay back in it and just float. And I was floating on it and in it and around it. And I had this overwhelming realization of how good God is, how much he loved me and everyone else. And I said to him, please, give me the hardest training I can stand and make the most out of me that you can. I've had times I wish I hadn't said that. Some of it's been pretty tough. And yet, I sit before you and I can say that now and mean it. When I remember the goodness of God, that's a very easy thing for me to remember. Bill read one of the pieces that I was going to touch on page 85, really have a day. I looked up reprieve. It's a stay of execution or a delay of punishment. Day of reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Clearly not contingent on my spiritual condition. I don't know what my spiritual condition is, and I'm not qualified to judge it. And I get in big trouble when I do try to judge it. It's like spiritual growth. It's not something I do, it's something I receive. It's contingent on the maintenance of it. To me, maintenance means two things. To maintain it in the sense of not losing something I've already got. Also, I must maintenance my spiritual condition in the same sense that I maintenance my vehicle. I rotate the tires, got the right pressure, and change the oil on time. I maintenance my spiritual condition. Daily prayer and meditation, reading spiritual literature, taking meetings into jails and treatment centers, prayer and meditation, letting people in traffic, saying please and thank you, doing the things, trying to spread love and joy, doing the things you've taught me to keep it in good working order. And I'm a very good judge of the maintenance of my spiritual condition. The spiritual condition itself, I have no idea. And I don't get involved in that. But the maintenance of it, that's what, to me, the evening half of step 11 is about, is for me to find out what kind of maintenance did you do on your spiritual condition today. It's an important question. I'm sober since 28 June of 84. I'm carrying a 41-year ship. And that's a long time for a guy that only agreed to 28 days, by the way. And it was easy for me this morning for all the things I've seen God do through me and in me and to everyone I know. It was easy to offer him my will and life this morning. It was very easy. I found something that's not quite as easy. This was first presented to me. I was sober about 2 years. I was driving down Nolensville Road in Nashville, and I stopped at my 5th traffic light in a row. And I'm a type A person. I get in a car, I am going somewhere. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking evil thoughts about that traffic light's mother. And it occurs to me that it's at least remotely possible that God has used those traffic lights to keep me from being in a wreck with a gasoline truck. And that his timing might be better than mine. And
I just think he's working against you.
You think he's what?
He's working against you.
Yeah, I know it. Well, I know he's hard to train. Big fella, take a knee. I quit praying for guidance 35 years ago for that reason. It occurred to me that when I pray for guidance, I'm giving God his directions again. Let's go with the guidance. And plus, I believe a loving God is sending his guidance every day. It's a free and clear gift. I'm asking for what's already been given. What I pray is that I would be open to his guidance today. All the blocks in the channel between me and God are at my end. His end's open. Okay, his end's clear. My end is where the problem is. So my home group is the Page 112 group in Old Hickory, Tennessee. We meet Monday and Wednesday at 6. So I'm 82 years old. I've got a young girlfriend. She's 78. And that's not funny. And a few weeks ago, she said, I'd like to leave early for the meeting Wednesday night because there's a home in your neighborhood I'm going to look at possibly buying. Well, the meeting is 2.5 blocks from my house. I want to leave at 5:29. I was taught to be 30 minutes early at my home group. So I said, okay. And what I don't know is that leave early is not one of her settings. And so we know that this home she wants to look at is on the North American continent. That's where we started. We found it. It won't work. Then she says, can we stop at the dollar store? I want to get one item. I'm being presented with what a friend of mine calls a 24-karat gold opportunity to keep my mouth shut. I'm going to have a real good chance at that, but I'm going to need some help. And what occurred to me when she said that was that part of my morning prayer is I might be the man she deserves, that I might treasure her and cherish her, be an open channel for God into her life and her an open channel for God into my life. And that came to me when she said, can we stop at the dollar store? I want to get one item. What would a man who treasured a woman say to that? And the answer was, of course. We pull in the dollar store. It's all in my neighborhood. Pull in the dollar store. She goes inside. She's gone a long time. I am in prayer. I am, watch this. This is important. I'm praying hard. You know, I always got a big kick out of praying hard. I always wonder what that means. Somebody can help me with that later. But anyway, I'm checked in. And I don't know what that item was that she bought. I can tell you it came out in 2 bags. I know that about it, and because I witnessed it. And as she got into the car, she said, "I'm sorry it took so long. There was a homeless guy in line in front of me, and he had selected more than they had money for, and I bought some of his items for him." And I said, "That's one of the reasons you're sitting next to me. I admire your heart." We pull up to the church. It's still not meeting time. We're still before the meeting. 25, 30 is a big crowd for our meeting on Wednesday night. I know them all on sight. There's a guy I don't recognize walking up the church steps as we pull up. I open her door, get my book out of the back seat. As we walk in, he's walking out. I stop and introduce myself to him. He's a newcomer. And he couldn't get all the way into the meeting. He couldn't do it. And I took him into the meeting. I introduced him around. There's a very good chance I gave him a sponsor. I like to do that. I'm not sure I did, but there's a fairly good chance that I did. I'm not taking credit for this. This is the point I'm trying to get to. God's timing is absolutely perfect. That was, what, a 15-second window? 30 seconds at the most for me to be there to keep that guy from walking away from that meeting. God's timing is perfect. I offered him my will and my life. I offered him my day. What's difficult for me is offering my moments. We use this phrase, we say, "I'm having a good day," or "I'm having a bad day." Let me give you a definition. Good day, my will's being done. Bad day, my will is not being done. That's what that means. I can bring that down to the moment. In this moment, is my will being done or not? And if it's not, I believe those moments when my will is not being done are designed to remind me to check back in. Don Pritz was one of my great teachers. And he said when something like that happened, he'd look up and smile and say, "As you wish." I'm trying to learn to do that. I've had very, very limited success on it. And I've been working on that for several years. To give him the moments, to stay in contact moment by moment, but especially when my will is not being done. I frequently stop to thank him when I catch a big smallmouth or something goes like I want it to. I'll stop and thank him. But to stop and thank him when it's not going the way I want it to. Because maybe there's a newcomer later in the day that my timing is going to need to be perfect for. I think that's part of what this whole thing is about. I pray for faith every day. One of the spiritual books I read says pray for faith. I do that. And I think faith is the lubricant of life. If I think I lack anything, what I actually lack is faith.
So does prayer work?
I don't know.
We like to think it works. That's why we pray, right? So when I was 30 years sober, I started getting really sick with liver disease. 8 years ago, this coming February, I had a liver transplant. And prior to that, I was on interferon a couple of times, which is really awful, trying to get rid of the hep C. And it worked, and then my liver failed. Well, I'm getting ready to go to Hawaii to lead a spiritual retreat. And I'm a mess. I'm on interferon, and rage is coming up. I'm just really miserable. Life is not going well. I don't feel good. And my friend Christophe, who's French, so he's an asshole. Well, it's just, it's a little racist, but it's pretty accurate. And he's one of my dearest friends, and he comes over, and he hands me the book, The Power of Now. He says, "Read this." And I said, "I've read stuff like that." He goes, "Damn it, Bill, just read it. Would you just read it?" Because he's watching me circle the drain, right? And so on the airplane going to Hawaii to help these poor miserable bastards over there, I read this book, and in the book, Tolle describes something in the preface, and he describes being this geeky little nerd guy before we know him like he is today, And he's in his hotel room. He's suffering from panic attacks and anxiety attacks in this apartment in Vancouver, British Columbia. In the middle of the night, he wakes up with a panic attack, and he walks out into his living room, and he raises his hands up to the ceiling, and he says, "I can't live with myself any longer." And the very next thought is, well, if I can't live with myself, there must be two of me. I wonder which one is real. And that was his moment of enlightenment. That was the beginning of him talking to people, and then they wrote a book, and then Oprah, and now we know who this man is. And I'm on the airplane, and I read that, and I went, oh my God, that's me. I think that's us. I think that's us. And I read the rest of that book voraciously. And over the years, I've read that book several times. I'm reading it with a guy right now. He's written some other books. It started that pathway of looking for something. Identification. It's identification. Now, I was in Hawaii leading this retreat, and I talked about that book the whole time. It couldn't have been that bad. They invited me back some years later, so I don't know if anybody else got anything out of it, but I was having a moment, you know. And during two of the sessions, I walked up on this hillside, and I sat on this little bench. It's a religious camp, and there was a shrine to the Virgin Mary, a homemade little shrine in the side of this hill. And there was a rickety old bench there, and I sat there, and the way I describe it, because I'd been meditating, I'd been doing some stuff. I was sober a while, you know, and I was 20 years, so I was 20 years sober. It was 30 years sober is when I had the transplant, so this was at 20 years. And so I started meditating with intent, and what I mean by that is I need help. I need help. And you can't help me. You can be kind to me. You can be loving to me. You can be sensitive to me. But I need something else. And by that time, at 20 years sober, I knew that. And I'd been trying to do stuff, but the connection wasn't there. You know, that's the way I describe it. I don't know that I thought that then. So anyway, I'm meditating and I'm breathing and I'm just watching my breath. And as the mind wanders away from the breath, because the ego doesn't like being in the present moment, there's nothing for it to do. It needs to be in the future or in the past where it can work on stuff. That's what it does. It's not the enemy. It's not trying to hurt me. God knows it needs me for transportation, you know. But it just does what it does. And in this meditation, you can watch that operate. You can watch it. And when it wanders away, you recognize that and you bring it back. Who's recognizing it? There's a watcher within us. There's another consciousness that can watch this one operate. That's a game-changing experience. Because evidently, I don't have to go where it wants to take me if I can see it and not battle against it. But at this moment, I'm just having an experience, and I'm sitting there, and I open my eyes, and the wind blew across the trees in this beautiful valley in Hawaii, and I couldn't feel the wind on my body. I could just see it going through the trees like a hand raking through grass. And I said, there you are. I don't know that I said that then. The way I've described it early on is I just got it. What? I don't know. Do you? I don't know. But I got it. It was an aha moment. Oh, that's what it's like. That's what I pray to. That, whatever that is, that's what I pray to. I don't know what I'm praying to. I don't worry about that. Years have gone by now, another 20 years. And what happens now is I pray out loud. I pray out loud because it's more dramatic. Right? It seems better, you know, rather than the silent mumbling, you know. It's like, and I'm, if nothing, I'm flashy, you know. So I pray out loud. And I cry out for whatever it is I'm praying for. So what do I pray for? What is it I'm looking for? The first time I did it with real intensity, there was a guy coming over to talk to me, a guy that I was working with, and I'd known this guy for a long time. Very angry guy, a guy from South Central, grew up real rough. And some incidents happened, and I'm trying to work with him, taking him through the steps. And he's sober a while. He's not a newcomer. And we have a relationship. But dealing with him is very difficult. It's really difficult. He's like aggressive, you know, and he's angry. And I knew he was coming over. And what I found myself doing, I prayed out loud and I said, please help me help this man. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. Please help me help him. So he goes out into my ashram in the backyard, which is where we smoke and talk about God. So it's an ashram, you know. And this is a holy place, you know. A lot of holy stuff happens there. A lot of obscenities and stuff, you know, because it's, you know, it's kind of me. And so I'm sitting out there with him, and we had a conversation. And the tenor of the conversation changed. I didn't say anything specifically wise and life-changing, which is the way I think that's going to happen. I want to say the right thing. I no longer believe that's what's happening. What happened is I really connected with him. I could feel him, and I believe he felt that. And the conversation shifted. I have no memory of what we talked about, but I know when he left, he stood up and he had tears in his eyes and he hugged me and he held on to me because he knew I'm not a threat. I don't know that I did that. I think it was that prayer. And when I pray out loud, it changes something in me. It doesn't change the outside situation. God's will is what's happening right now. And when we discuss what God's will is, it's because we don't like what's happening right now. We want something different. There is no difference. There is no alternative. It's what's happening right now, always. And we're looking for an alternative, and there is none. But when I pray out loud, it changes something in me, so my perception of what's happening right now changes. And that changes everything, because I react to it differently. In my consciousness, I want to say the right thing to this guy. It isn't telling me, connect with him. Connect with him. Feel him. Understand him. When I said that prayer, that's what happened. But only knowing that is looking back at what occurred that day. So I started praying out loud a lot. Yeah, it's like, I think there's some power in that. There's something that changes something inside of me. Once again, back to sponsoring people, back to actively trying to help. That interaction, when you enter my life, it disrupts everything. Are you inconvenient? All the time, you know? And I think I need to be inconvenienced, right? And what's happened over the years, I just don't mind being inconvenienced anymore. I've gotten used to it. It's kind of the rhythm of my life. I don't see it as inconvenience anymore. Early on it was, but not anymore. I recently did an inventory, and I did an inventory of aspects of my nature that I don't care for, ways that I think I should be different. It was really eye-opening. One of the things you realize if you do something like that is how little power you have over yourself, much less anybody else. You know, what are the odds that I'm going to be different? What are the odds I'm going to be some shrinking violet sitting over in the corner while everyone else dances? You know? No, I'm closer to Barkley than I am to that. You know, it's like, and Barkley's the benchmark for over the top, you know? And so I looked at it and I think I should be quieter. I think I should be more demure. And I think the truth is I just need to be more sensitive to other people around me. I am who I am. What I lack is that sensitivity, you know, being appropriate in the moment, because it's all about me all the time. And what I pray for is, please, one of the best prayers, please relieve me of the bondage of self. You said you would come across, I've said that, give him orders, help me. I'm asking for help. I really need some help. I'm not asking you to change the outside world. Come into me, quiet me, calm me, help me to be more sensitive. Now, I've been married for a long time. I've been married 3 times, but this one's been for 31 years. It's a new record, right? And she's a challenge. I'm married to a woman you have to deal with, And over the years, a lot of this prayer, a lot of this has been, when you sponsor people, you're talking about relationships a lot, right? I mean, that's what everybody has trouble with, personal relationships, Paige. The bedevilments. We're all having trouble with it. Marriages, bosses, people, neighbors, whoever it might be. One of the things I have is I have a wife that nags me. Now, her family says the same thing. It's a character trait she has, that she seems to be unwilling to give up, right? But one of the things she does is she tells me, I don't like you eating food in the living room without a plate. My response is, I bought this goddamn house. I'll do whatever I damn please. That never goes well, right? Never goes well. And she wants me to get a plate. And I'm telling you, if anybody out there is you're running into this problem, I'm going to give you some advice. Do not get the plate. Stand your ground. Hold forth. Somewhere you got to draw the line, Because you know what's going to happen if you get the plate. You know what she's going to want you to do then? Take it back to the kitchen. And it doesn't stop there. She's going to want you to rinse it off and then put it in the dishwasher. So just don't get the plate. Stand your ground. So I'm out in the ashram with my guys complaining about this, And they're looking at me like, what the hell is the matter with you? We like her. She feeds us, And I'm getting no support from my fellows for this. So one day it struck me. I had an epiphany. Probably came from this God thing we're talking about. I said, Bill, why don't you get the plate? This is a novel idea. Maybe if you get the plate, the argument will stop. What do you think? So I got the plate. And I felt very magnanimous in this concession that I'm making, I got the plate, and then graciously I returned it to the kitchen. And I rinsed it off, but I do not put it in the dishwasher. That's where I'm drawing the line. And she's never asked me to put it in the dishwasher. And the argument stopped. This is the bondage of self. This is the ego defending itself. This is the ego standing its ground. This is the ego that doesn't want me to pray. It's the one that doesn't want me to ask for help. We got this. We can handle this. We know. That's why I've been married 3 times, And so prayer, I believe prayer works. And I'll tell you, I've come to this conclusion within the last few years of my sobriety. This is not something that I've been doing for 40 years or 30 years or 20 years. This is recent. This man, when he came, was coming into my backyard, and I said that prayer out loud was probably 2 or 3 years ago. And I do it now. The other thing about this prayer and meditation, I'm a big believer in meditation. My sponsor says you can't stay sober on 11 and a half steps.
He says it's not optional.
Yes, he says it's not optional. I have taken the option many times, but I've been meditating for a long time. But at 20 years sober, when I started meditating with intent and all of this, I gave myself permission not to be disciplined. I am undisciplined. So if I try something and if I miss a day, I just quit. I don't know what that's about. Some would say it's childish. So when I said this, when I made this commitment to myself, I said, just do it every day. You don't have to do it for a certain amount of time. You don't have to do it at a certain place. You don't have to, just do it every day. Do it every day. And I was really good with that for a long time. I'm still pretty good with it, actually. I believe that the amount of time I spend at it or what I say is kind of irrelevant. It's like checking in. It's like being connected to whatever that might be. And it has helped me immensely. And when I do it, the other thing is, you hear people say, just quickly, I'll be done. You hear people say that noises disturb them, that you're meditating and somebody fires up a leaf blower and stuff, right? The truth about that is if you look at it, if the perception changes, you'll realize that that sound that you're hearing when you're sitting quietly is in the same space that you're in. This is the experience that you're having. So rather than rejecting it, embrace it. I was leading a group in meditation down in San Diego one time. It was a small group, a retreat I was leading, and we were meditating. I said, we're going to do a 20-minute meditation, which is shocking to them. It's a long time. I said, we're going to give this a shot. Let's see how it goes. Across this little valley we were in, it was the countryside, there was this brass band that struck up. And this was an elementary school band. They were awful. It wasn't even good. You couldn't even go along with it. And they would stop and then start, and the trumpet player didn't know what the hell he was doing. And people started giggling. And I thought, am I going to stop? And we just let her go. We just let her go. And I asked them afterwards, how many of you were disturbed by the brass band? And virtually everybody raised their hand. I said, did you stop and think that it was in the same space we were in? This was the experience we were having. If you tried to reject it, it was awful. If you embraced it, it was just what's happening. So in my meditations in my backyard, somebody fires up a leaf blower, or I'm a car guy, right? So a car goes down the road, and I go, is that mufflers, or is it a big cam? Is it a V8? Is it let's get together with it, see what it is. Oh, that's that bullshit thing down the street, then, and it's in my space. The other thing about prayer and meditation is if the phone rings, answer it. If they weren't supposed to be in your life, they wouldn't have called. I'm not running the show. If it says spam risk, let it go, right? But, I'm not making the decisions here. This is not an interruption. It's what's happening right now. My wife will come out and ask me a question, and while I'm ohming out to Tibetan bells, and that's what's happening right now. So it's I try to make it part of my life, right? And spiritual condition is a matter of perception. And over the years, my perception about this has changed, of what a spiritual condition is. Does anybody have any questions? No questions? No critiques?
Scott, alcoholic. From the third step promises, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, hereafter. I want to share a personal story. I was sober 5 years, sitting at my desk one night typing, and suddenly I had a twinge in my lower back. Within 10 minutes, I was in pain I did not know was available. I did not know you could hurt like that and remain conscious. Being driven to the hospital, and it occurred to me on the interstate that I had offered God my will in my life. I never had offered him my death, and I could be dying. So I did. And I said, I'm not asking to go. If it's my time and your will, take me. My fear of death has been gone since then. A number of years ago, I spoke at one of our conferences, and a gentleman stopped me after, and he said, I want to ask you a question no one's been able to answer. I thought, well, I probably can't either, but I'm sure willing to give you a few minutes. He said his wife of 40 years was in hospice, and he was sitting by her bed. It had all been said. They loved each other deeply. There was nothing left. And he was holding her hand when he saw her exhale and he knew it was the last time. He said a few moments later he had the most magnificent feeling all over his body. Euphoria does not cover it. It was absolutely astonishing. I wish you could have seen his face when he talked about it. And he said it lasted for a minute or two, and then it faded away rather quickly. He said, what do you think that was? And I said, I think it was her spirit giving your spirit one more full hug before she left for heaven. And he and I both burst into tears, and he said, yeah, that's got to have been it. That's got to have been it. Within the last few weeks, I have promised my closest friends and my closest family members that when my time comes, if it's allowed, I will come give each of you one more full hug, my spirit to yours, if it's allowed. And I think it's going to be allowed. That's all I have.
Well, you want us to go till 7:30?
Yes. I do. Other people might.
I think we're done.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you all very much.